Greetings, Earthlings. Greetings this Earth Day Sunday. This morning, let's celebrate the living gift of God's blue-green world. Earth Day began its inaugural celebration April 22nd, 1970, with a national teach-in where over 20 million people across the United States participated. This year, technically tomorrow, is Earth Day's 54th anniversary, celebrated across 192 countries. Now, one of the factors sparking Earth Day was a 3 million gallon blowout of a well, an oil well, off the coast of Santa Barbara, California. So, beginning in crisis. But Earth Day also got its start in response to this first high-resolution photo. The photo famously known as Earthrise. It was taken by astronaut Bill Anders during the Apollo 8 mission. The moon's cratered surface is in view. Swirling atmospheric clouds created a marbled effect above the ocean blue. The image caught many human hearts by surprise. Some of you remember, right? Earthrise changed how we viewed our planet. The only home we know, for now? Well, yes, for now. This home supports our joys and sorrows of life. As poet Archibald MacLeish penned some words at the time. To see the earth as it truly is, small and blue and beautiful, in that eternal silence where it floats, is to see ourselves as riders on the earth together, brothers, siblings, on that bright loveliness in the eternal cold. The 1960s sure were a time of global vision. Think about it. Some of you, like me, have firsthand experience. We had the Whole Earth catalog, remember? Woodstock, the anti-war movement, Hair, the musical, and the Summer of Soul, Let the Sun Shine In. If you haven't seen that, you got to find Questlove's documentary on the Summer of Soul. Well, civil rights leaders also cast their global vision. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. received the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo in 1964, he entitled his acceptance speech, "The Great World House." His bold words mapped out an inclusive dwelling place for people seeking community in the midst of social chaos. And he proclaimed in that speech, "We have inherited a large house, a great world house, in which we have to live together, black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Hindu and Muslim, a family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interest, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace." Ever the wordsmith, Dr. King drew his image of the great world house from a Greek word used in the New Testament. The word is oikos, meaning household. We still hear resonance of oikos today in English. The words economy, ecology, ecumenics. Hear that ec stem? Well, that stem means a home where something's shared, like in ecology, that means shared biological habitats, or economy, meaning a household of shared goods, or ecumenics, meaning a whole earth of diverse religious communities. With the Great World House, Dr. King's prophetic imagination sparked human consciousness to see and understand what Earthrise then pictured so clearly. We live in an interdependent global household where in order to rise, we have to rise together. But let's pause for a moment. Let's pause and think about it. The thing about global vision, of seeing the Earth as a stunning marble in space, well, the thing is, we don't live off-world up in space, right? We don't live in a space station or a habitat ring encircling the Earth. Like all humans, we live in particular localities of land, water, culture, history, plants, and creatures. We reside or inhabit places that form and shape us, places that become part of our identities, who we are at our very core. This past February and March, my husband Bob and I returned to Western Australia, where we lived over 25 years ago when our children were young and I was teaching in a college in Perth. At the time, we took every chance we could to explore the vast, wide places of Western Australia. One of our favorite places was Ningaloo Reef, a vast fringing reef and World Heritage Site located up the northwestern coast. There, we discovered Turquoise Bay. We could just walk in from the beach and snorkel with amazing colors of fish, with rays, with reef sharks and turtles, the most beautiful coral we had ever seen. My children said it was like being in an aquarium. It was. So on our recent trip, we traveled back to Ningaloo. Of course, the first day we were there, we set out for our beloved Turquoise Bay. But as we walked along the beach, snorkels in hand, we encountered long, thick tide racks of broken coral pieces. The shallow water sands were gray and scraggly. We had to swim out much further into deeper water to find living corals. The staff at the park's educational center told us that over the years, more cyclones have disturbed the reef. Mining companies have upped the use of nearby shipping lanes, and more visitors arrive with sunblock that's toxic. But the most destructive impact is when extreme heat combines with no breeze, then the shallow water just cooks the corals. We saw firsthand the stress the world's climate trauma has brought to Ningaloo. I was heartbroken. But here we were, part of that increased visitor traffic. We drove there in a fossil-fueled car. Our conventional sunscreen had toxic ingredients. What could we do? We took the staff's invitation to snorkel in less traveled bays. We bought all new marine-friendly sun lotion. And we were more intentional about our car use. But still, I carried the ache home with me. Now I know what solastalgia means. We might be hearing that word more and more. Solastalgia. It means grief and distress one feels when environmental change impacts places one's familiar with. That sense of despair goes right to the heart of our very identity, of who we are because of the impact of place and what can we do. Just this past week, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, announced that coral reefs now are experiencing the fourth global bleaching event. Will my children, my grandchildren, will your children and grandchildren ever experience a living coral reef? Well, let's turn to another story. Let's stop and shift our focus to our scripture story. Different time frame, different landscape, different creatures, different place. But maybe we'll get some clues. Let's now look at the Gospel of John. John's writings provided many images for early Christian artwork, such as this story of a good shepherd and some sheep. What was John up to? At the end of the first century, John wanted to assure his folk that they could trust the teachings and way of Jesus in the face of dire persecution. No longer were they welcome in their former religious communities. No longer could they trust the Roman rule to protect them. In fact, at times, the imperial law even approved of seizing or arresting Christians. John's community lived with dangerous threats aimed to diminish their lives, even stamp out their very movement. John's analogy, like many of Jesus' parables, set out a choice for his community. He set out before them a way, a hopeful way, but also a dangerous way. The choice was, one, the way of faithfully following Jesus, the other, a way of recklessness, bringing harm. John sketched the choice as the way of the Good Shepherd or the way of thieves. Now, in our time, we can sketch John's choice perhaps a little differently, a different way, as living according to an ethic of care, taking care of others and ourselves, or living with an ethic of extraction, just taking for oneself. In a day where we as individuals, families, and communities, we're people immersed in professions, properties, and responsibilities, can we find relevance in John's story? Well, I hear this in this way, as presenting a choice. On the one hand, should we live in ways that extract and accumulate as much as we can in order for one's own household to have plenty in the future? Or can we live respectfully and humbly in conscious care for future generations, not just for ourselves as a species, but for all life? To live in conscious care so there's enough in the great world house. As we consider John's story for today, let's choose the path of generous care. Well, the commitment to generous care, let's admit it, can be a challenge. So often the choices are not as clear as we hope. When we look out on our world this Earth Sunday, we see complexities and challenges. That doesn't take away from the choice, but we have to take it seriously. In seeking an ethic of care, we then have decisions to make, like, well, how do we eat with care? What kinds of energy should we use? What modes of transportation? The kids knew answers to this pretty good, didn't they? Well, this next question I find really difficult. What do we do with our investments? But we can always start somewhere. Have a look at the handout in your bulletin. Okay? Pull it out. Have a look. Our United Methodist Creation Justice Movement lists actions that we can take to start someplace to further our commitment to earth care. This is a choice for the long haul, not just for today. Another thing we can do, and this is good news this morning, is to stay awake to the new life breaking out around us. As Rebecca Solnit encourages us, it's not too late. Don't assume there's a predestined straight line from climate change to climate catastrophe. This morning, let me circle back and finish up my story about our visit to Ningaloo. There's more to this story, thank God. Remember, it had been about 25 years since my family had been there. When we returned, we noticed something brand new, a new addition to the park. We found the new Jarabi Turtle Center. Yeah. Fortunately, over the years, the Ningaloo Park Service recognized the need for designated sanctuary areas to protect the nesting grounds of green turtles, loggerheads, and hawksbill turtles. An education center was also developed to train visitors like me, my husband, in how to best respect and care for turtles during nesting seasons. Well, one evening around sunset, Bob and I noticed a small group of people that had gathered at the center. We were just going along, and so on a whim, we thought, oh, what are they up to? And let's join them. Well, we got there just in time to be with this group as we witnessed, the hatching of dozens of baby green turtles. I had no idea how exciting, profound, and energetic this event could be. New life suddenly broke out from the dunes as these little flappers made a beeline to the waves. Let's have a look. Go, go. Here it goes. Almost. Yay! I know. Feels so good. Of course, we stayed out of the turtles' way, and a few hungry seagulls, though, got involved. They got in the way, and not all the babies made it. Yeah. We learned that 1 out of 1,000 baby turtles eventually grow up to maturity. And the idea then was stunning that female turtles, perhaps one of the very ones we saw, and now you saw, in another 25 years, that mother turtle would be returning to this very beach at Ningaloo to lay her eggs, about 5 nests a season. Well, in 25 years, I most likely won't be there. But the ability to respond with care for Earth now makes all the difference, because all of this is related. While my spiritual sense of place does include broken corals, it also includes hopeful baby turtles breaking out of the sand. Ningaloo Reef continues to experience great change, and threats remain for the future. But recovery and adaptation, I think this is Solnit's point, recovery and adaptation are possible because of the ways people are caring for Ningaloo. Bob and I will support these efforts in the future. So in closing, let's circle back once again. See, this is kind of an orbiting sermon. Let's circle back around this Earth Day to Dr. King's Great World House. Dr. Vicki Crawford, who's the director of the Morehouse College Martin Luther King Jr. collection, she claims that King's vision is not just some old 60s nostalgia. Okay? The spirit of Dr. King continues to warn us and also prod us with spiritual alertness. As he said, one of the great liabilities of history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through great periods of social change. Every society has its protectors of the status quo and its fraternities of the indifferent, who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. But today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. The large house in which we live demands that we transform this worldwide neighborhood. Together, we must learn to live as brothers and sisters, and I'm saying earthlings, or we will be forced to perish as fools. So let's stay awake. Let's stay ready for the break-in of new life in our midst, in this very congregation. I know you can't read it probably from there, and I certainly can't see it from here, but there's one of those bubbles I want to call attention to. This church puts it in diagram form that we are walking the ways. And who said it? Words, see? You know it by heart. We are walking, we are flapping like those turtles, the ways and words of Jesus. So today I invite you to commit yourself, again, to an ethic of care, Jesus' ethic of care. And our Vision 2025 sees it as, quote, promoting mind, body, spirit, planetary health and wellness. See, you said that. Planetary health and wellness. So we are on the way. Let's keep moving where God's Spirit is breaking out, especially in the midst of change. Let's make Earth rise together. Happy Earth Day.